You open your phone and see another headline about killer robots. You scroll past it almost without thinking. The image of a humanoid machine with glowing red eyes feels like a movie trailer. But the real danger isn't a machine that hates you. The real danger is a machine built by people who don't hate you at all. A machine born not from malice, but from a logic so ordinary it lives in your own habits. To understand it, you have to go back over 100 years to a shipyard in Portsmouth, England. The year is 1905. Britain rules the waves. Its navy is twice the size of any rival. That should be enough. But the admirals are haunted by a single question. What if someone builds a ship so powerful that every existing battleship becomes useless? So they decide to build that ship themselves first. They pour all their resources into a vessel called HMS Dreadnought. It is faster, heavier, and deadlier than anything floating on the ocean. When it launches in 1906, the world gasps. And then a strange thing happens. Instead of making Britain safer, it makes the whole world more dangerous. A historian named Robert Massey spent years crawling through the letters of the men who made those decisions. He found that the German admiral, Alfred von Tirpitz, read the news of the Dreadnought and faced an impossible choice. If he didn't match the British, Germany would be at their mercy. But if he did match them, Britain would see it as an act of aggression. He chose to build. Not because he wanted war, but because the alternative was surrender. And once he started, Britain had to build more in response. So began a spiral that neither side could control. The German Kaiser and the Russian Tsar exchanged personal letters, calling each other cousins, begging for understanding. Their words were gentle, but their shipyards kept working, because neither could afford to trust the other's words. By 1914, the two navies were locked in a suicidal embrace, and the assassination of an archduke lit a fuse that the naval race had already wired. Why didn't they just agree to stop? They tried. Diplomats met, exchanged pleasantries, and went home with nothing, because to stop building, even for a year, meant risking that the other side wouldn't stop. And the cost of being wrong was national annihilation. A political scientist named Robert Jervis studied this pattern across centuries. He gave it a name, the security dilemma. He showed that the measures a state takes to feel safe almost always make its neighbor feel less safe. So the neighbor takes its own measures, and the first state now feels even more exposed. It's not a story of villains. It's a story of two people pointing guns at each other, each certain the other will fire. Neither wants to shoot, but neither can put the gun down, because the instant one does, the other has a free shot. Have you ever felt trapped in a race you didn't start? That's the feeling of a nation trapped in the security dilemma. In 1960, a strategist named Thomas Schelling wrote a book called The Strategy of Conflict. He described what he called the reciprocal fear of surprise attack. Imagine you and your enemy both have nuclear missiles. You don't actually want to launch them, but you know that if your enemy launches first, your missiles will be destroyed before you can retaliate. So you're tempted to launch preemptively, just in case. The enemy knows you're thinking this, so they're tempted to launch even earlier. This fear feeds on itself, pulling both sides toward a war that no one desires. Schelling won a Nobel Prize for showing how rational people can produce irrational outcomes. You might think this is abstract theory, but it nearly happened. In 1983, a Soviet early warning system reported incoming American missiles. The officer on duty, a man named Stanislav Petrov, had minutes to decide. He looked at the screens, doubted the data, and chose not to alert his commanders. He saved the world because he guessed the machine was wrong. What if the machine had been trusted? What if Petrov hadn't been there? The next time, the human might not be there. Will a human even be in the loop? That's where you come in. Today, the gun doesn't need a human finger. It can be code that decides in a fraction of a second who lives and who dies. The race for lethal, autonomous weapons has already begun. Not in secret labs beneath volcanoes, but in government procurement offices and university research parks. A former Pentagon analyst named Paul Scharr wrote a book called Army of None in 2018. He interviewed the engineers and generals driving this technology. He found no cackling supervillains. He found people trapped in the same spiral as those admirals in 1906. They know the risks. They know an autonomous weapon could malfunction or be hacked or simply select the wrong target. But they also know that a potential adversary is developing the exact same thing. And if that adversary deploys a swarm of AI drones that can outthink any human pilot, you cannot defend with a human-operated system. So you must build your own. Not because you want to, but because you're terrified of what happens if you don't. When Scharr asked a DARPA engineer about the ethics, the engineer shrugged and said the tools simply get built, and policy is someone else's job. The logic is identical to the Dreadnought. It is identical to the missile gap. It doesn't matter who started it. The race itself becomes the enemy. Can you feel the logic closing around your own life? Now, you might think this has nothing to do with you, but the technology making it possible sits in your home. The voice assistant that wakes you up runs on AI. The camera that unlocks your phone runs on AI. The recommendation engine that knows what you'll watch before you do runs on AI. These all rely on the same kind of artificial intelligence that guides a drone to its target. The line between your convenience and a weapon is thinner than you think. In fact, it's often non-existent. Take image recognition. You upload a photo to a social media app and it automatically tags your friends. That feature was trained on millions of labeled faces. The exact same technique is used to train a missile to identify a convoy. The only difference is the label. A computer scientist named Fei Li created a dataset called ImageNet in 2009. She wanted to push forward the study of computer vision. She gathered millions of photographs from the internet, each labeled with an object. That dataset became the foundation for the AI that now powers your photo app. But the military took notice. The same dataset helps drones distinguish a school from a bunker. Li never intended that use. But code doesn't understand intent. Every time you interact with an AI, you are feeding it data, refining its models, making it smarter. Your daily clicks and swipes are part of the training set for the systems that will one day be repurposed. You didn't ask for this, but you can't opt out. The algorithms learn from human behavior, and you are human. Who gave your data away? You did, every time you clicked agree without reading. Now you might wonder, why haven't nations just banned autonomous weapons entirely? Campaigns have tried. In 2017, the Future of Life Institute, founded by MIT physicist Max Tegmark, released an open letter signed by thousands of AI researchers and tech founders. It called for a global treaty to ban lethal autonomous weapons, modeled on the chemical weapons ban. Governments gathered at the United Nations in Geneva, year after year. Each meeting produced eloquent speeches, but not a single binding treaty. What's the obstacle? The problem is verification. Nuclear reactors are visible from space. Missile silos can be photographed, but lines of code hide anywhere. A software-only weapon is invisible until it activates. And even if you could verify, the temptation to cheat would be overwhelming. Because if your adversary has a secret algorithm that gives them a split-second advantage, you lose. So the race continues in the shadows, and the public only sees the occasional headline. What will the next headline say? This is the tragedy of competitive pressure. You grow up believing that wars start because someone wants to conquer. But the deadliest wars often start because no one feels safe enough to stop. You are watching the same dynamic unfold in real time. Only this time, the stakes aren't just territory or resources. The stakes are the speed of decision. And the speed of decision is approaching the speed of light. Once weapons become fully autonomous, the pace of battle will outstrip human comprehension. There will be no time for a reasoning mind to step between the algorithm and the trigger. No Petrov to doubt the screen. No room for a conscience. Only reaction to reaction, loop buried inside loop, until somewhere in the chain, a miscalculation escalates. And you won't know it's happening until it's already over. You open your phone. There's another headline. This time, you don't scroll past. You read it, and you see the shipyards of 1906. You see the bunkers of 1962. You see the silent server racks, cooling towers pumping steam into a cold night sky as an AI learns to parse a satellite image. And you realize the killer robot never needed a madman to invent it. It only needed everyone else to be building one too. So you scroll up and you look at your own reflection in the dark glass. And for a moment, you understand that the system that builds the weapon is the same system that built your hands, your routines, your everyday choices. You are not outside it. You never were. The headline was always about you. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe to our channel. A new story every week.